Hey, this is Robert of Mayflower Bookshop, and you can find me on the web, mayflowerbookshop.com, or email mayflowerbookshop@mac.com. So today I would like to share with you the Bhagavad Gita. And again, Gandhi read the Bhagavad Gita. He claimed that he would get inspired by some point in it, and then he would go through his day, and it helped him to creatively free, in a most peaceful way, to free India from the attempt of slavery by the British. And Martin Luther King Jr. read it, and he wanted to live that life down south in USA and live in a tent and be Gandhi, like a little diaper India thing on, And he was convinced to use the Christian Bible because most Americans wouldn't mind shooting Krishna, but they're not going to shoot Christ. They might hit you, but they might hit Christ by accident. So that was kind of like a humorous insight. My point and what I'm doing here is I'm trying to share spiritual knowledge of every different religion and philosophy and spiritual science and yoga, NeoPlatonism, Hermetics, everything that's spiritually magical that helps you to come alive. And right now I'm going to share with you the Bhagavad Gita, which Blavatsky claims the land of Bhagavad was the first land that settled down after Atlantis sunk. And that the Bhagavad Gita is an Atlantean text of the Sun Oracle. In all the ancient traditions, there was kind of their version of the Father, Son, Holy Ghost. The Father was an unseen, invisible, beyond thought, beyond feeling, beyond any image, causeless cause and rootless root, a divine oneness that defied any conversation. And that to experience God, God created the Son, S-U-N, or the only begotten Son, S-O-N, where the light came so that we could see and understand and hear. And basically, in a simplistic way, the Father's oneness, Krishna is this Christos of the Greeks, or Hermes or Christ, depending on how you want to look at it. But it's the second person of the Logos. The first and second Logos is the Father and the only begotten Son, the sunshine of universal mind. And then there's the world. And there's all these forms, myriad, universal, infinite amounts of forms. And so when we look at ancient India, we have Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. We have a similar situation. Brahma's this, like, Son and the Father are one. When you go to the mindstream continuum of universal mind-heart, it's kind of like the mind and heart are one, but they're both unique. And then there's this body with all these several expressions, 7 notes of music, 7 days of the week, 7 precious metals, 7 chakras. This idea of the Sophia wisdom of all things. So today we're going to explore, with that little preliminary of the Bhagavad Gita, and again, Gandhi read the William Q. Judge edition, which a Blavatsky student gave to him. And people who knew Blavatsky gave him that. And he also read Sir Edward Arnold edition, which is much more poetic and imaginatively intuitive, whereas this Bhagavad Gita of Judge is from the Sanskrit translated, the book of devotion, dialogue between Krishna, Lord of Devotion, and Arjuna, Prince of India. It's like the dialogue between, Thoth and Trismegistus, Thoth and Hermes with Tot, the little baby in the heart, the baby spiritual person in the heart, like the Raphael painting of the Virgin Mother with babe, or Isis with babe is the same kind of thing. These are metaphors and myth, realities of the awakening mind stream of our soul and our passage through time and space to explore who we are. And I think if you want to know what gives me permission to speak so boldly and share all the diverse knowledge that I've discovered in my journey at the Mayflower Bookshop and in the Theosophical Society and with Tibetan Buddhists and Hindu and India and NeoPlatonism. My whole journey, what gives me the boldness is the troubles of the world. And out of compassion and out of like a freak out of looking at how the world is so destructive and angry and hateful and acting out of separation. I mean, in the original early spiritual teachings of all times, the only sin was acting out of separateness. Instead of acting out of unity, that we're all one at a spiritual level, materialistically we're all separate and unique expressions of that oneness. That's the idea of E pluribus unum of the United States transcendentalist Emerson and Jefferson and all the founding fathers, Ben Franklin, the people who wished for freedom and higher truths and didn't know how to fully implement them at the time. On every dollar bill is E pluribus unum, unity and diversity. So we have this idea of spirit moving through all forms, one spirit, one love, one truth. It's kind of like a Bob Marley song. All the artists are trying to get to this, give peace a chance. But how can we do it with a passionate, compassionate heart and a smart head that people can understand that they want to make it their own? Because nobody can do it for you, or you're just a little kid still. Each of us has to come to these things on ourselves and be self-igniting. So the Bhagavad Gita is a wonderful book that so many people read, and it's probably the number one Bible of the world. There's been so many, a lot of people don't know that, but there's been so many editions and translations. And, you know, you get some people, I won't mention her name, but some people do like 30, 50 books on the Bhagavad Gita when it's really this small little book. Just like the Voice of the Silence is a small little book. The Light on the Path is a small little book. As a Man Thinketh or As a Woman Thinketh, these are small little books you can carry with you on your journey. So let's go to chapter 11 in the Bhagavad Gita. And the reason I wanted to read this chapter is I think a lot of us have suffered this plight that Arjuna gets into. It's like, you know, Jesus, the Christ, talks to the apostles and Krishna talks to Arjuna. And in this particular chapter, it's kind of like Samila, Samila, I don't know how to say her name, but this ancient myth reality Greek, pre-Greek, earthly mortal woman makes love to Zeus, who's like at the time the Christ or the Krishna then, you know, the God man or something, the spiritual. We're in hope of the God man. I think when Jesus says, "Do you not know ye are gods in the becoming?" Those are virtues. And just like Psyche in the story of Psyche and Eros or Cupid, the mortal woman that Zeus makes love to, her jealous sisters are jealous of her, and they say that he must be a bad guy and that you have to see him for who he really is. And Psyche runs into trouble here, which is a whole other story I go into in my book, Astrological Aspects of the Art. I go into a retelling of Psyche and Eros. But Semele has the same problem. She wants to see Zeus not as the nighttime lover and friend. She wants to see him in his pure form. And it's like Carl Jung says, you can't see the archetype. You can't touch on the archetype. You can't touch the archetype and live and survive. And the archetypes are like the mountain, the river, the star. I mean, you can't live on a star, you know, you can't live on a mountain. You know, the gods into becoming. These are archetypes. The heart with wings. So in this chapter 11, vision of the divine form as including all forms, we're looking at some very deep archetype of, it's like seeing God or seeing Christ or seeing Buddha. all of us have had the experience of being in a room with a person who has more virtues than we do. Like when many people have had that experience with spiritual teachers or mentors, or the Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa, Saint Francis, Eckhart. You hear these reports throughout history that when you're with somebody, even if you're just a guitar player and you're with a much better guitar player, you're going to play better. If you're a tennis player and you're with a better player, you're going to play better. And Joseph Campbell, who I was lucky enough to hang out with a little bit, he had that idea too, that if you want to get, there's people you can hang out with that are going to lessen your game and dumb you down a bit. And there's ones you can hang out with that will improve your alertness and awareness in your heart. Now, it's true that when you're totally enlightened or something, when you're representative of the second person of the Holy Trinity, when you're the Solar Logos and you are Spirit, Archangel, and the Sun, and you come to earth and partake of the Trinity, and you become incarnated at baptism of water and fire to become Jesus the Christ, and for 3 years, as Rudolf Steiner talks about. This is very interesting, and even Krishna goes to hell to redeem the dead at some point in a story, like Odysseus and Ulysses and so many other great heroes. Even Jesus does. So these are really deep stories that we have to concentrate on one thing at a time. And like in meditation, we can concentrate at one virtue at a time, a total virtuous embodiment, or we can concentrate on stillness and no thought, awaiting our deepest self to have something important to show us. So I'm reading chapter 11 with comments, Vision of the Divine Form as Including All Forms, from the Bhagavad Gita, the Book of Devotion, the Yoga of Devotion. Arjuna, my delusion has been dispersed by the words which thou, for my soul's peace, hast spoken concerning the mystery of the Adhyatma, the spirit. That was the chapter before. For I have heard of full length from thee, O thou whose eyes are like lotus leaves, the origin and dissolution of existing things, and also thy inexhaustible majesty. It is even as thou hast described thyself, O mighty Lord. I now desire to see thy divine form. O sovereign Lord, I desire to see thy divine form. Wherefore, O Lord, if thou thinkest it may be beheld by me, show me, O Master of devotion, thine inexhaustible self. Again, this is the conversation of the lower manas with the higher manas, the desire-fear mind with the fearless bodhi mind, a Buddhic compassion for awe. Krishna answers this request. Behold, O son of Pritha, my forms by hundreds and by thousands, of diverse kinds divine, of many shapes and fashions. Behold the Adityas, Vasus, Rudras, Aswins, and the Maruts. See things wonderful never seen before, O son of Bharata. Here in my body now behold, O Gudakesha, the whole universe, animate and inanimate, gathered here in one, and all things else thou hast a wish to see. But as with my natural eyes thou art not able to see me, but as with thy natural eyes thou are not able to see me, I will give thee the divine eye. I wonder if that's a single eye or a third eye. And again, in other talks I talk about the single heart, the eye in the heart, the ear in the heart. Okay, I will give thee the divine eye. Behold my sovereign power and might. Arjuna, now referred to as Sanjaya. O king, having thus spoken, Hari is an epithet for Krishna, meaning that he has the power to remove all difficulty. O king, having thus spoken, Hari, the mighty Lord of mysterious power, showed to the son of Pritha his supreme form, with many mouths and eyes and many wonderful appearances, with many divine ornaments, many celestial weapons upraised, adorned with celestial garlands and robes, anointed with celestial ointments and perfumes, full of every marvelous thing, the eternal God, whose face is turned in all directions. The glory and amazing splendor of this mighty being may be likened to the radiance shed by 1,000 suns rising together into the heavens. The son of Pandu then beheld within the body of the God of gods the whole universe in all its vast variety, overwhelmed with wonder. Dhyana Jaya, Arjuna, the possessor of wealth, with hair standing on end. Dhyana Jaya, Arjuna's overwhelmed at this point. Seeing the possessor of wealth, he's not the possessor of wealth too, but with hair standing on end, bowed down his head before the deity and thus with joined palms addressed him. Hindu mode of salutation, like namaste, I divine the divine in you, I recognize the divine in each other, folded hands over the heart and bowed head. We bow our heads, really. It's not to an external thing, it's really you're bowing your head to the internal possibility of Krishnahood or Buddhahood or Christ-like. We're bowing our heads to our hearts. And so Arjuna says, I behold, O God of gods, within thy frame all beings and things of every kind. The Lord Brahma, in Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, or Sat Chit Ananda, we have this whole idea of the oneness, the universal mind, and the ever-changing opportunity for virtue, thus bliss. Behold, I behold, O God of gods, within thy frame all beings and things of every kind, the Lord Brahma on his lotus throne, all the rishis and the heavenly serpents. Again, human beings were never meant to be denser than the fragrance of a flower. So you often see these spiritual beings sitting or floating on flowers, and then the rishis are 7 rishis, 7 virtues that survived Atlantis, that we learn from to awaken all of our chakras to be co-equal. And the heavenly serpents, Jesus says, be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Again, this serpent there's probably the bad snakes or whatever, snake oil salesman. But then there's the good. In ancient language, when Jesus says, be wise as serpents and harmless as doves, he's talking about wisdom and compassion. Serpents shed their skin once a year, and this is why Plato and Aristotle gave talks under the sycamore tree, because it shed its skin once a year. And this idea of the serpent being wise and following the left and the right path to find the middle path, go straight ahead. There's a lot of wisdom in this path of the tilted, because of the tilted earth, the path of the sun has a northern and southern declination, and this goes into astronomy, and this early esotericism has 2 eyes. One looks inward and one looks outward toward natural science. So we're trying to find that reawakening of the inner and outer. So back to the Gita. I see thee on all sides of infinite forms, having many arms, stomachs, mouths, and eyes. But I can discover neither thy beginning, thy middle, nor thy end. O universal Lord, form of the universe, I see thee crowned with a diadem and armed with mace and chakra. Among human weapons, this would be known as the discus, the chakra. But here it means the whirling wheels of spiritual will and power. And the serpents was the great masters of wisdom and compassion, wisdom especially. I see crowned with a diadem and armed with mace and chakra a mass of splendor, darting light on all sides, difficult to behold, shining in every direction with light immeasurable, like the burning fire or glowing sun. Thou art the supreme inexhaustible being, the end of effort, changeless, the supreme spirit of this universe, changeless, the never-failing guardian of eternal law. I esteem thee Purusha. Purusha Prakriti is like spirit and matter, but it's much deeper. Purusha is like the eternal person. The same name is also given to the human by the Hindus. We're spiritual beings with a body. I see thee without beginning, middle, or end, of infinite power with arms innumerable. The sun and moon, thy eyes, thy mouth, a flaming fire, overmastering the whole universe with thy majesty. Space and heaven and earth and every point around the three regions of the universe are filled with thee alone. The triple world is full of fear. The triple world being mineral, plant, animal, physical, emotional, mental. Again, Steiner and Blavatsky would go into some different way, but very similar, and the Hermetics and NeoPlatonists would too, and Manly Haw. So again, spirit, soul, body is one way to see it, but physical, emotional, mental, thinking, feeling, willing is the upper and down descent of the triple world that we are trying to birth this fourth member of Arjuna, the spiritual mind relating to the higher mind. It's why we study spiritual literature and bring that in our experience into our stillness. So I'm commenting a lot because a lot of people read the Gita. I've sold thousands of these and thousands of those other books, but who understands it? So I wanted to share my thoughts, even though some of you are way more qualified and will be bored with this. But a lot of people haven't studied much, and so it's fun to get these different words and vocabularies that express ourselves. All these spiritual books reflect our internal processes and the human being and becoming, beingness, awake. So without beginning and end, infinite power, arms innumerable, the sun and moon, thy eyes, thy mouth of flaming fire, overmastering the whole universe with thy majesty. Space and heaven and earth and every point around the three regions of the universe are filled with thee alone. The spirit of Krishna's permeates everything. It's like a oneness. It's like God's everywhere and nowhere. The triple world is full of fear. O thou mighty spirit, seeing this, thy marvelous form of terror. Of the assemblage of the gods, some I see fly to thee for refuge, while some in fear with joined hands sing forth thy praise. The hosts of the Maharishis and Siddhas, great sages and saints hail thee, saying, Svasti. This cry is supposed to be for the benefit of the world and has that meaning of compassion to the whole world. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but let's try it again. Savasti. And glorify thee with most excellent hymns. The Rudras, Adityas, the Vasu, and all those beings, the Sadyas, Vishwas, Ashwins, Maruts, Ashmapa, the hosts of Gandharvas, Yakshas, and Siddhas. All these names refer to different classes of celestial beings, like angels, archangels, archives, seraphim, cherubim, like the Christian Dionysian Areopagite, ninefold angelic kingdom. And of course the Greeks had female muses, 9 muses. So this is their version, a very early version. These cities all stand gazing on thee. All the hierarchies gaze on thee, amazed. All the worlds alike with me are terrified to behold thy wondrous form gigantic, O thou of mighty arms, with many mouths and eyes, with many arms, thighs, and feet, with many stomachs and projecting tusks. For seeing thee thus touching the heavens, shining with such glory, with widely open mouths and bright expanded eyes, my inmost soul is troubled, and I lose both firmness and tranquility. O Vishnu, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the preserver, so he's calling on Vishnu to preserve him because he's losing it. It's kind of like when people take drugs and they get this giant vision that they can't hold, and it destroys their ego, but there's no one left to bring home the revelation and the new insights and the new medicine for the tribe or the community, see? And this is a problem with drinking and getting high and drugs and medication, when you can't have a spiritual vision. And this is why when Tim Leary was visiting the Mayflower a few times, and we debated, I was debating against the use of drugs, and he was telling me that you had to have the pure substances and the right measurement, and you had to have somebody not on it, and you had to have right environment. But the most important thing was to have the metaphysical spiritual books, which were the maps to the astral and spiritual plane. And so otherwise you'll be crying out for mercy to Vishnu. Perhaps you'll be crying out to Mother Mary or Tara. Tara, the female embodiment of Buddha, but in ancient times it was Tara from the Celtic land. Tara was the whole land and the elements and the presence. And when you're in the land of Tara, nobody would rob you or lie to you. We need that. We need Tara to come to the whole earth. We need Mary to come to the whole earth. We need the Father and the Son to be present in every heart and mind. So, back to the Gita, Arjuna calls on O Vishnu because he's losing his firmness and tranquility. Beholding thy dreadful teeth and thy face like the burning of death, I can see neither heaven nor earth. I find no peace. Have mercy, O Lord of gods, thou Spirit of the universe. The sons of Dhritarashtra, I don't know how to say that. Dhritarashtra. With awe, these rulers of men, Bhishma, Drona, and the Karna, and our principal warriors, seem to be impetuously precipitating themselves into thy mouth, terrible with tusks. Some are seen caught between thy teeth, their heads ground down as the rapid streams of full-flowing rivers roll on to meet the ocean. Even so, these heroes of the human race rush into thy flaming mouths as troops of insects carried away by strong impulse find death in the fire. Even so do these beings with swelling force pour into thy mouths for their own destruction. Thou involvest and swallowest all these creatures from every side, licking them in thy flaming lips, filling the universe with thy splendor. Thy sharp beams burn. O Vishnu, reverence be unto thee. O best of gods, be favorable. I seek to know thee, the primeval one, for I know not thy work. Again, me commenting. I think that when you're madly in love, you see a person's higher self. And then later you meet what has to be worked on, and a lot of relationships have problems with that. Meeting of heaven and hell, or meeting of heaven and earth, to birth the consciousness, soul, spirit, self, mindstream continuum that H.P. Blavatsky in the Gita Theosophy refers to as Buddhimanas, the mind that identifies with the Bodhi, compassion of the universe, and the universal mind. And then Rudolf Steiner will talk about the consciousness soul getting born out of this intellect and sentient soul to knock on the door of the spirit self, which is the manas, the universal mind, to come to know all things. When you come to know all things, then you're going to come to love all things, Bodhi, because everybody has these spiritual, eternal things inside of them. And when we suffer fires and floods and disease and health problems, we need to call on the Christ or the Krishna or the Vishnu. We need to call on the deepest heart of universal compassion and the deepest mind of stillness listening for new solutions. Because if we do the same old things, we're going to get in the same old place. And it really is amazing how many spiritual people call me every day from around the country, and maybe the world even, because Switzerland recently. And they're worried about everything. They're really, really worried because they're afraid to lose their things and their health and their friends and their house and their things to a large extent. And this if we don't have a sense of reincarnation and karma from direct experience, if we don't have a sense of selflessness through our radical stillness and listening heart, if we don't have a sense of connection to the whole universe, past, present, and future, due to our spiritual studies and friends. How can we awaken our unique contribution to the world? And without giving our unique contribution to the world, how can we receive what the world has for us? Because there's no place, there's no space, there's no inner space. So here in the Gita, Arjuna's pleading. He wants to know the primeval one and their workings and work. But he's freaking out because he sees too much too fast. And this is part of the gradual path of Lamrim Tibetan Buddhism. This is also the gradual path of the first, second, and third class of Rudolf Steiner, the 3 degrees in Masonry originally, only 3 degrees, the 3 degrees of Rosicrucians and Rosicross, the 3 degrees of esoteric school of Theosophy, actually the 3 degrees of NeoPlatonism and Hermetics. And when you say Father, Son, Holy Ghost, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, we're talking about a trinity, a threefoldness that transforms our thinking, feeling, and willing into an awakened soul that can marry and converse with heaven and hell or earth. And I think that thrice born means that we hit that third place, thrice born Hermes, thrice born Dionysius. You have Christ born previous to earth, and then born on earth, and then reborn in heaven. I mean, you could say that. But anyway, each of us has to see these things for ourselves and how it can enter into our own life and awaken our own thinking, feeling, and action hero. So Krishna answers Arjuna, who's freaking out, because his mind and heart have opened so big. Other people freak out because they lost something they identified with, but we've all had those freakouts. We saw something too big and we can't hold it. Or we're driven all of our life from the one vision we had. Sometimes occurring on a near-death experience where Christian Rosenkreutz taps you on the shoulder and your whole life ends and begins again. Many people have that experience of St. Paul, who's killing all these Christians and gets struck by light, falls off his horse. How many of us have fallen off our horse? Off the physical appetite, and come to the ground and saw the light. Because we can't persecute the Christ in each other. We can persecute the dumb person, but we can't. The spirit, like Marianne Williamson's always saying that, I think she says the Christ in you isn't guilty or something like that. Like the spirit in you the spirit in us is always pure, and the body's going through trials and tribulations, and the soul is the learner. So Krishna answers Arjuna, I am time matured. There's a great other place where Krishna says, I am the time of flowers. That's really beautiful. I mean, really, the total flowering, But here Krishna says, I am time matured. Come hither for thy destruction of these creatures, except thyself. Not one of all these warriors here drawn up in serried ranks shall live. Wherefore, arise, seize fame, defeat the foe, and enjoy the full-grown kingdom. They have been already slain by me. Be thou only the immediate agent, O thou both armed one. Arjuna was a famous archer who could use the celestial bow Gandiva with either hand equally well. And I want to remind you, it's in the Gita too that Krishna says to Arjuna, you can neither slay nor be slain. See, our body can die and get born again. But according to our karma from our soul, but the spirit is always a pure vision and heart. There's 3 of us. We're connected to everything in the universe. We're radical stillness, and we're this awakening mind. We're a product of the great mother and father. And we're the sons and daughters of God, you might say, which means the huge virtue of oneness. Okay, enough of me. So Krishna's telling Arjuna, they're already dead, so you're the one who has to rise. Be both armed. Both armed is like spirit and matter. Be not disturbed. Slay Drona, Bhishma, Jayadratha, Karna, and all the other heroes of the war who are really slain by me. Fight, thou wilt conquer all thine enemies. Of course, in Tibetan Buddhism, the spiritual warrior, the enemy is your non-virtues. Sanjaya, Arjuna, responds, when he of the resplendent diadem, the brilliant tiara, heard these words from the mouth of Keshava, Krishna, by another name, be saluted, Krishna, with joined palms and trembling with fear, addressed him in broken accents and bowed down terrified before him. Arjuna, the universe, O Hishrikesha, is justly delighted with thy glory and is filled with zeal for thy service. The evil spirits are affrighted and flee on all sides, while all the hosts of saints bow down in adoration before thee. And wherefore should they not adore thee, O mighty being, thou who art greater than Brahma, who art the first maker, O eternal God of gods, O habitation of the universe? Thou art the one indivisible being and non-being, that which is supreme. Thou art the first of gods and most ancient spirit. Thou art the final supreme receptacle, that is, that into which the universe is resolved in the final dissolution. The final supreme receptacle of this universe. Thou art the knower, and that which is to be known, and the supreme mansion, and by thee, O thou of infinite form, is this universe caused to emanate. Thou art Vayu, god of wind, Agni, god of fire, Yama, god of death, Varuna, god of waters. Thou art the moon, Prajapati, the progenitor and grandfather art thou. Hail, hail to thee 1,000 times repeated. Again and again, hail to thee, hail to thee, hail to thee from before, hail to thee from behind, hail to thee on all sides. O thou, all infinite, is thy power and might. Thou includest all things, therefore thou art all things. It's starting to sound like Marianne Williamson, isn't it? The angels to the right of you, angels to the left, angels behind, angels front. I mean, it really means spiritual intelligence. The difference between the materialist and the spiritual person is that the materialist thinks the universe is dead and proceeds to act like it's dead and kills it. To the spiritual person, everything's alive with intelligence. Everything's got little elementals and angels and fairies and archangels, and that God is the oneness that permeates all things, and everybody and everything is part of the wondrous creation of God. We're all part of this huge family. And there's hierarchy, but it's also permeating. See? Can you see the permeating? Oneness, love, truth. Truth will still you. Love will move you to see these things. If you don't love yourself enough, start loving somebody else. But love. Okay, I'm saying that. Let's get back to the Gita. Hail to thee on all sides. O thou awe. Infinite is thy power and might. Thou includest all things. Therefore thou art all things. Yeah, draw a circle holding all things, yeah. Having been ignorant of thy majesty, I took thee for a friend, and have called thee, O Krishna, O son of Yadu, O friend. And blinded by my affection and presumption, I have at times treated thee without respect in sport, in recreation, in repose, in thy chair, and at thy meals, in private and in public. All this I beseech thee, O inconceivable being, to forgive. Yeah, forgiving comes out of the Aquarian age. When we get to the Aquarian age, the sixth cultural epoch of 2160 years, we leave the Piscean age of I believe and want to have faith, and otherwise I don't believe and I don't have faith. We're in the Aquarian age. We're going to tap the sixth cultural epoch, which would be in the sixth round, the sixth, in the fifth and sixth earth. In the sixth earth, we will all experience everything that we're going to start to experience in the Aquarian age, everything that everybody experiences. We're going to feel what they feel. So that's going to help us to treat each other a little better, I think. So Arjuna says, Thou art the Father of all things animate and inanimate. Thou art to be honored as above the Guru himself. Guru means from darkness to light, not necessarily a person. And worthy to be adored. There is none equal to thee. And how in the triple worlds could there be thy superior, O thou of unrivaled power? Therefore I bow down, and with my body prostrate, I implore thee, O Lord, for mercy. Forgive. For means future, give means give yourself to the future, but there is a forgiving from the Buddhic manas level. Otherwise, there's only karma, right? Okay, let's keep going. Forgive, O Lord, as the friend forgives the friend, as the Father pardons his Son. Jesus says, go to the Father and all else will be given to you, and Father, forgive them, they know not what they do, as he's being killed on the cross. So that's a big statement. The Father's the oneness, by the way. He doesn't call on the Mother here, he calls on the Father. And the Father's the oneness. When we experience the oneness of the universe, we transcend separation. Okay. The incarnational spirituality is to have the Trinity, though, in thinking, feeling, and willing. Okay. Forgive, O Lord, as the friend forgives the friend, as the Father pardons his Son, as the lover the beloved. I am well pleased with having beheld what was never before seen. And yet my heart is overwhelmed with awe. Have mercy then, O God, show me that other form. O thou who art the dwelling place of the universe. I desire to see thee as before, with thy diadem on thy head, thy hands armed with mace and chakra. Assume again, O thou of 1,000 arms and universal form, thy four-armed shape. Arjuna has been accustomed to see Krishna in his four-armed form, as a friend, not only in the images shown in youth, but also with when Krishna came into incarnation and could therefore look on the four-armed form without fear. Now again, the four-armed or four-headed form, you'll see statues with 3 heads, you won't see the fourth one behind, is that we have the mineral, plant, animal, and we have the physical, emotional, mental. But that fourth member is the reincarnating ego that identifies with the higher mind and the bodhi, compassion, and the atma, the universal form, that higher trinity. And so that's why when the lower self sees too much of the higher self, he can't handle it. And so he wants to come back to this physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual being, this fourfoldness. Krishna says then, out of kindness to thee, O Arjuna. A deep meaning here, by the way, O Arjuna. It's not the Om yet. Those fellow students will know what I'm talking about. The O Arjuna. Okay. Out of kindness to thee, O Arjuna, by my divine power I have shown thee my supreme form, the universe, resplendent, infinite, primeval, and which has never been beheld by any other than thee. Neither by studying the Vedas, nor by almsgiving, nor by sacrificial rites, nor by deeds, nor by the severest mortification of the flesh can I be seen in this form by any other than thee, O best of Kurus. Having beheld my form thus awful, be not disturbed, nor let thy faculties be confounded, but with fears allayed and happiness of heart, look upon this other form of mine again. Sanjaya, more spiritual name of Arjuna, I think. He calls Krishna Vasudeva. Vasudeva, having so spoken, reassuming his natural form, and thus in milder shape, the Great One presently assuaged the fears of the terrified Arjuna. Arjuna says, now that I see thee again, thy placid human shape, O Janardana, who art prayed to by mortals, my mind is no more disturbed, and I am self-possessed. Krishna, thou hast seen this form of mine, which is difficult to be perceived, and which even the gods are always anxious to behold. But I am not to be seen, even as I have shown myself to thee. I am not to be seen, by study of the Vedas, nor by mortifications, nor almsgiving, nor sacrifices. I am to be approached and seen and known in truth by means of that devotion which has me alone as the object. Of course, Plato would say the word alone is all one. And Plato even says, through the Neoplatonists, I believe Proclus, that what we're talking about here, this higher consciousness, is the flight of the alone to the alone, the flight of the all one to all one, the one in awe and the awe in one. The three musketeers serve this higher invisible fourth member. Be that rather than the three fools, the three stooges. The three wise men follow a star to that fourth member. These are all myth realities. They're realities, but they're myths of our spiritual soul. So anyway, back to what this thrilling conclusion of Krishna saying, I am to be approached and seen and known in truth by means of that devotion which has me alone as the object. He whose actions are for me alone, who esteemeth me the supreme goal, who is my servant only, without attachment to the results of action. Without attachment to the results of actions, and free from enmity towards any creature, cometh to me, O son of Pandu. Thus in the Upanishads, called the Holy Bhagavad Gita, in the science of the Supreme Spirit, in the book of devotion, in the colloquy between the Holy Krishna and Arjuna, stand the 11th chapter by name, the vision of the divine form as including all forms, the one in all and the all in one. So this in meditation, see, there's learning to think this way. There's moving meditation, which is learning to think this way. And every day, just like I have to tune my guitar, we have to tune our bodies to the oneness, to the awe and the one. Everything and nothing. And we have to sit still while we're aware, without flying away or sinking or falling asleep, without wandering mind. And we have to await something to really arise that will connect us in our hearts and minds and bodies with the whole world. May peace, joy, and lasting wisdom, insight, compassion arise in us all. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Tat Sat. Om Vajra Hum. Peace, peace, peace. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. And Namaste. May the divine in me and you bless the world around us. I'll see you next time. This was the Bhagavad Gita and Robert Thibodeau of MayflowerBookshop.com. Blessings.